this is gonna be perpetually topical because in the online urbanism and transit communities, especially with the big channels on YouTube, you'll have RMTransit, that's Reese. You'll have freaking Alan Fisher, that's the Armchair Urbanist. Take your pick. They're going to rave about Portland's transportation system, and they're specifically going to rave about Portland's MAX system. Their light rail is state of the art. We should be implementing the same kind of system across the nation and even the world. It's actually exported. That's what Canberra has now at this point. I'm telling you, man, it is fucking stupid because of how, in reality, incompetent rail, but especially light rail, really is. And allow me to give you a perfect, prime, evergreen example. Weather. Light rail cannot function. In fact, sometimes at all in weather. And you think, oh, it's because it's really bad. Well, no, it's not that actually that bad. When it's has a little bit of snow and a little bit of freezing rain or sleet and some wind and it's below freezing, apparently it requires this to completely and indefinitely suspend, aka stop running any light rail, any MAX trains whatsoever. And that is what happened on the 13th. It's absolutely fucking absurd. In the summer, an example with light rail transit, and in this case, it's not just TriMet, it's pretty universal. They have a rule where, for safety reasons, and this is safety not for you as a rider, it is safety for the trains, the pantograph, the electrical overhead electrical wires, and the tracks, the rails themselves, and even the wheels on the train, actually, because it gets above 90 or above, and they have to go 30 miles an hour, no faster than 30. Usually, you'll notice they'll prefer, and they'll instead only go about roughly 15 to 20 miles an hour. Light rail is genuinely fucking terrible, and I've been wanting to make a video on all the massive issues with light rail and why you should not advocate for it, and you should actually do everything you can to advocate against it. Because it is literally the trashiest, worst mode of transportation in existence. And that is, of course, very specifically in regards to how the United States is obsessed with using it, which is not how light rail is supposed to fucking be used. It is not supposed to be used as an intercity or a metro line, a subway line, or anything like that. It's not meant to go across the metro area. It's not meant to be any, 7, 8, 9 miles long, or even 30, 40, 50 miles long, like the blue line is. It's supposed to be no more than maybe, I don't know, 3 miles long if you have a very high density urban core. Because it's literally meant to complement all other modes of transportation, but dominantly bus. Supposedly, light rail, and thus MAX, is so superior in every possible way to dirty little bus. Bus is such a sad, pathetic excuse for transit. But light rail is the best thing it's like it's omniscient to these people. But again, we have an evergreen example that's proof that's not the case. I mean, you have a little bit of snow, a little bit of freezing rain, a little bit of, life, literally, not to reference Craig Morgan like that, but literally, little bit of life happens, and you have to indefinitely suspend, aka stop, running your state-of-the-art, best mode of transportation ever, MAX light rail system. You really want that in your city? Okay. But it's a waste of fucking money spending billions of dollars, like literally $1 billion per mile is the average cost. You're dumb. And yeah, it's going to vary state to state, but the point stands. It's not worth the price at all. And as you can see, now today, this is the 14th, this was at 3 o'clock today in the afternoon, they gave an update saying that, they still can't do it. Of course, the entire time, they're using what else but dirty little old buses. The worst form of transportation, according to a light rail head. Literally, without fail, with light rail systems, all they ever use are buses, because all the time they have nothing but faults, nothing but problems, nothing but the most easy to interrupt and strand passengers mode of transportation out there is rail, specifically and especially light rail. And again, especially in this format where it's not just looping around in a city core complementing bus service, it's actually its own mode. At this point, you're half-assing it. You're just saying, yeah, I don't want to fucking spend the money to actually make a proper rail system and network to cover the entire metropolitan area or maybe some other cities. No, you know what? We're going to go and corrupt the fucking use of light rail. And this is what happens when you do that. You have to use buses to compensate and to fix your problems. And it happens all the time. It really freaking does. Like, you have to... The amount of bus bridges, aka shuttle buses, they have to use because of how frequently light rail has issues is insane. It's a consistent thematic. It happens all the time. It's just fucking disgusting. It's an old form of transportation. Light rail has been minimally updated, especially in terms of the actual infrastructure and its functionalities, because switches are the most common fucking fault of a light rail system. And again, state-of-the-art TriMet MAX light rail is the epitome of that. It is the perfect proof of that. You can watch TriMet alerts or un-TriMet alerts, which I highly recommend because they usually get alerts out way quicker and way sooner than TriMet's own alerts account ever even bothers to do. It's a constant. Like, it's borderline daily that they have a switch issue and all of a sudden there's delays. There's sometimes worse. It's at grade. So you have all the grade crossings. You have to deal with that problem. Sometimes the gate arms don't come down. They malfunction. Sometimes it's associated with the switch issue. You find that out later, and then you have to take more time, or you have to have buses because what the fuck? Like, now you have to fix two different things that are mechanical. You have to... There's so many stupid things like that. And because it's that grade, you also have the problem of idiots cutting off the train or diving under the rails as they're coming down. You have the fact that accidents happen all the time. And there's even a pretty high frequency where people attempt suicide by jumping in front of the fucking train. Like, there is just one after the other of problems. And the thing is, with rail, especially in this form, like Max Light Rail, and especially the Blue Line, the biggest issue is being at grade and having all these interruptions happen, along with the fact that it's not a reliable mode of transportation in the slightest amount, because of the intensely high amount you have to compensate with bus service. You have to keep fucking plucking old buses. Literally the reason why TriMet, Portland's transportation system, has and keeps hundreds of old buses at each of their frickin' depots is literally to run max shuttles and bridges. That's what they're there for. They're there to be a shuttle bus because they know how inevitable and how frequent it is that their light rail system, state-of-the-art, world-class, fails and has to then use buses, apparently so much worse and less efficient than freaking light rail, to do the literal light rail's job. It's one of the reasons why people who are so gung-ho on light rail piss me off, because they will not budge. They will not be told facts. They will not be shown reality, because even if you do, they will absolutely do mental gymnastics to come up with anything they can and desperately grasp at straws for why that's invalid, and they're only ones who are valid, and you absolutely need as much light rail as you can get. It's fucking insane, and I hate it. Like, they don't have any common sense. And I would not be remotely surprised, by the way, to find out that people like Alan Fisher, Reese, RMTransit, all these different these big creators that are supposedly armchair urbanists or former urbanists or transit planners, whatever else, this, I guarantee it, because I watch it happen all the time with these guys. I'll come across their channels when they're still really small, and for some reason, by the time they hit 90, 80, 90, 100,000 subscribers, all of a sudden they flip script and they're all raving and just going off about how great light rail is and how everybody needs to implement Max service, because Max is just so state of the art and it's so great, and it's so much better than that dirty little bus. You know, bus is so that's like so 1980. We got to use light rail. Like, it drives me ballistic, and I can't stand it. Like, make shit make sense and stop selling your soul to the light rail lobby, because there's guaranteed, it's a blatantly obvious observable fact that there is 100% such a thing as a light rail lobby, and that lobby pays creators all the time. If they get enough, big enough, and enough influence, and people start talking about them enough, and they watch their videos and they share them enough, all of a sudden they're part of this like weird group or cabal or web of like people who get paid. I just about guarantee they're getting paid by this light rail lobby to push the light rail agenda. And it's like, it's not fucking worth it. How are we, and this is a great perspective, by the way, in terms of like people think, well, it's probably worth the price. How are we going to defend the price of light rail where it's $1 billion, $1 billion per mile, which taxpayers are paying for, whether they wanted it or not, by the way? Orange Line's a perfect example of that. When they proposed it to the corridor, as I always refer to it as, where it runs along in that vicinity, the catchment basin for the line, that's actually who the 56% were that voted against it. They didn't want it. And guess what happened? We were forced to pay for it anyway, and there it is. And literally nobody uses it outside of the downtown core, which are the business people who use it just to go between these short little hops in downtown. They stay downtown. Very few people use it to go down to Milwaukee, let alone down across the river very far, if at all. And yeah, so $1 billion per mile is obscene. That's how much it costs, or costed us, to pay. We had to pay out of our tax money for the line we did not want, which is the Orange Line Max. It was equivalent to exactly $1 billion per mile. This is for a Max line, by the way, that had over 80% of its entire trackway already implemented and built. They didn't have, none of that price tag came with actually building the line. Erecting catenary wires is not going to cost you that much. So the fact that you have that is already itself like money laundering levels of like, what the fuck? How, this doesn't fucking make sense and add up at all. 7.8 mile long light rail line costs $7.9 billion. That's before modern inflation and everything else. So you know it'd be way more expensive now to build yet another line or extend the yellow line, aka what they want to do with the fucking IBR, even though literally nobody in Washington wants it, to where they legally wiped their hands of having anything to do with it. Like, $1 billion per mile is inexcusable and indefensible. I don't care how much you think it's much more fuel efficient, way more environmentally friendly, all this other stuff, higher capacity, more frequent, doesn't matter. And I'll tell you why. When you, and this is whether it's in the United States or not, when you can spend only about equivalent or just a little more than 7.9, so let's say $8 billion on a 7.8 mile long rail line, on an actual semi or full high speed rail line through, by the way, heavily developed cityscapes, like way more than Portland. And it's for, you know, a solid 30 to 80 miles. And you have full-size rail cars and locomotives. And it really does average like anywhere between 70 and 100 miles, 120 miles an hour service between stops throughout the line. And it costs you the same price or upwards of maybe $30 million. How the fuck are you still going to try to defend paying for and supporting building light rail lines? How? How can you possibly do that? Look at fucking TriMet, an example for something that happened during the fucking inflation and the global financial issues that we're having right now due to COVID or whatever else, or probably really global finances manipulation. Like, they paid the most puny amount to get TriMet running. It currently runs. It's a true high-speed rail line and service. It's pretty luxurious too. The train's actually high quality. It goes throughout the entire Yucatan Peninsula just about. How in the fuck can you and this is in an isolated, very jungle thick, heavy part of the world and their country, which means it's going to cost a stupid amount more to get all of the fucking workers and all of the fucking transportation costs covered, not just for all the supplies and the equipment and everything else, but also for those workers to even get to the grounds where they're going to start working. And then you have to worry about transporting all this fuel and all this other shit, and then getting people back and forth between where the fuck they're putting them to stay before getting them back again to the work site and back and forth the whole fucking time they're building this thing. That's really fucking expensive to do that in such an isolated area. So you already know that should cost a ton more. And of course it does, but the problem is that comparably, mile for mile, bang for buck, there is no comparing paying for fucking Max related and styled light rail services and what they paid for that. In equivalency, it was dirt cheap compared to what we get for fucking light rail. There's no defense for light rail whatsoever at all. And technically, I said this earlier, and I can't let myself do this without mentioning that technically there's a slight correction. There is one mode of transportation that I cannot stand more than light rail. And that's tough as hell to do. That's a wicked high bar to clear. And it does it like nobody's business. It's called trolley buses. I will fucking take that to my grave. My deepest, blood-curdling, boiling disposition for that fucking Frankensteinian, half-ass fuck-up that is the mode of trolley bus. That vehicle should have never been invented. It should have never came to anyone's mind, and it should have never existed. At most, it should have been the fucking butt of a joke among fucking these tiny little niche groups of transit nerds. At most. Just as a fucking literal comic book joke and reference for the transit nerds. That's it. It should not have ever existed before that. I could go on forever about how wrong it is that this Frankensteinian monstrosity that is, and royal fuck up, that is trolley buses exist in the first place. And there is no defense of those existing either. There's so many people who have tried to defend them to me, and you will never begin to do anything but waste your fucking time, life, and breath on me. I will never move from my position of how anti I am of trolley buses. They make no logical sense. Pick one. Are you gonna fucking put a trolley / streetcar / light rail system in, or are you gonna use a BRT system, a bus rapid transit with buses, actual bus service? Which one? You should never think you should have both in one vehicle known as a trolley bus, because that's what trolley buses are. They are bus or they are light rail. They're literally trying to be both things. They're trying to be streetcars, aka trolleys, and buses at the same time. You cannot have both. Pick one and stop being a lazy fuck. That's my rant there for that, and I'm going to keep it at that. So yeah, again, to anybody who tries to defend light rail, you're a fucking moron. And you really need to start using your brain correctly so you can start using your brain for logic and understand, yeah, people like me are the ones who have it right. Light rail is a non-supportable mode of transportation. It is outdated, it is way too fucking expensive, and there's no logic in defending its existence. Try again next time. You know what? It's way more cost effective. True, real BRT, bus rapid transit. That's the only real mode that actually can be anything close to what all these pro diehard light rail fanatics claim light rail is. If you do that right, protected bus lanes, you have the right fucking functionality and systems on the bus to be able to capture live time violators of the bus lanes, and you have incredibly harsh criminal penalties levied against these drivers who violate the fucking law when it comes down to doing bus lanes. There's literally a system that exists where they put it on a bus, it just uses the power like anything else in the bus does of the bus itself, and it automatically films and snaps a picture of people's vehicles and license plates that are clearly violating the bus lane policy, and auto generates a report and sends it to the local police departments so that the person can immediately be found, charged, and hopefully they won't do it again. That's why you also have to have really harsh penalties, because if you have really harsh penalties, what happens is it's going to encourage people to not fuck around and find out. They're not going to try to challenge it again or try to go in the lane again no matter what's happening, because if they do, it's going to get way worse. We're talking like starting fine $2,500 at least, preferably $5,000 starting fine. Just kick them in the fucking teeth, make them bleed hard, and make them really hurt and their head just throb. It'd be like, now next time it's going to be worse. It's going to increase to at least whatever the second, the twice the amount is. So in this case, let's say it was $5,000, so $10,000, preferably at that point. That's why you would start with $2,500 fine. Then it comes to $5,000 fine. Let's keep it that way for simplicity's sake. So now the second violation is $5,000, but it's not just $5,000. Now you get your license revoked for at least 3 months. Third offense is $10,000 fine, and not just revocation of your license, but the revocation of your license is a year at least. And you get your car removed from you. Your car gets repoed. And you have no legal rights to reobtain your car from the repo lot until that year is up. Then you can get your car back. And obviously, because you don't have a license and it's suspended for at least a year, there you go. If you have a fourth offense, this is for obviously, see, you already think, well, nobody's going to offend that. That's the fucking point. If you think, well, that's way too harsh, that's exactly why. That's exactly why you do that. Because that way it already creates the psychology in everyone's heads of like, well, who would violate that? That's the fucking point of why you get harsh. Because that way people aren't going to fuck around with it. They're going to be like, whoa, I'll risk that. Nobody's going to fucking risk that unless they're really fucking insanely rich. And man, are they fucking egotistical and arrogant. Those people are probably the fucking Beamer owners, the Porsche owners, the people who have Lamborghinis or Ferraris or fucking G-Wagons, right? These are those people. For those posh people who love to make themselves appear as rich and fucking like, fuck you, you're beneath me as possible, those are the only ones who would dare fuck around and violate these laws. Now, if they do it a fourth time, then they really have some audacity. Because at that point, and again, you lay this out for everybody, so everybody knows this well ahead of time. Like, this is a law. It is unalienable, meaning it is not alterable. There's no law. There's nothing here. We're protected against loopholes. We're protected against any alterations to this law. It can only be as it is. There's no chance you can get out of this. You violated a fourth time, that's a permanent revocation of license. You're never allowed to drive again. Never, ever allowed to obtain a license, a permit, or do anything associated with driving again. And you are, of course, therefore not allowed to possess or be in possession or sit in the driver's seat legally of a vehicle. If you're found in violation of that, we'll have fun with that. But that's the idea. So that way, you're really fucked. And obviously, the fine at that point should be probably increased to somewhere between $25,000 and maybe even $100,000. Because obviously, they're high-rolling motherfuckers. So you might as well throw the whole fucking thing at them. And it's useless to try to arrest somebody for that, so you might as well just say, fuck it, here you go. Have fun. Because I don't even think the richest, most egotistical fucks are really going to try to fuck themselves over that far. They're going to let their egos play that hard into their determination to violate laws like that. Eventually, they're going to have to be forced to be like, fuck, fine, but fuck you. It's like, yeah, fuck you too, dude. Fuck you too. You fucking arrogant prick. So that's what you do there. And obviously, like I said, it's a protected but protected bus lanes. So it's protected as in there's a barrier of some kind there, whether it's bollards, those yellow plastic stick things, whatever the fuck you want to call those, you know, or just a really big, hard, angled curb that's really high sitting. So that way it's clear, like, yeah, it's gonna be obvious if you're choosing to violate this law. And oh, you're gonna fucking hate yourself for doing it. Because it's not gonna be worth it to anybody. Obviously, priority transit signals, and this is at every intersection. And obviously, by the way, with the protected bus lanes, it's every part of the entirety of each bus line that's BRT. You can't do what TriMet does, which is half-ass it, or even in this case, like barely even a sixth of an ass given about doing a true BRT line with fucking FX2. That thing is a fucking disgrace in so many ways. It doesn't have priority transit signals at all of its intersections. It's actually at very limited amount of intersections that they have to pass through. On top of that, and this is the most biggest insult and fuck you to true BRT that they did, is I'd say it's at least a solid 90%, and that's not an exaggeration, of the entire fucking line has no bus lanes. No bus only lanes or no bus only designation at all. It just doesn't exist. And that is fucking disgusting. Like, how in the fuck can you try to claim your BRT like that? You also have your normal bus stops. They're colored. They're painted green to fit the theme. They're technically different than your old deep blue bus stops and shelters. They're just actually on two pegs, slightly curved fucking roof. Congratulations, there's your new stops. Apparently, because it's branded, that's officially a way superior bus stop. It's not. It's the same fucking shit. Like, it drives me ballistic. So no, you cannot do that. You have to have it the entire way. Now, technically, there's logistics issues with fucking protected bus lanes, especially the whole way, because you need to be able to go in and out depending on if there's a blocking incident or vehicle. Because obviously, in the bus lanes, you're gonna fucking allow EMS access, no matter what. Like, they're gonna be able to use it, but specifically if they're on a call. Obviously, that's the only way that they legally are gonna be allowed to use your bus lane. They're not gonna be allowed to use it, obviously, if it's just commuting between getting fucking lunch and going back to the precinct. Obviously, they're not gonna be allowed to use it. At that point, they're just like everyone else, so they have to use the normal traffic lanes. It's very simple shit. And then obviously use real high capacity buses and make sure that their headways, their frequencies, are so consistent and frequent that it's going to be at least every 5 minutes. And the biggest piece to this whole fucking thing is the fact that buses can fucking detour. They can reroute. They can detour, they can reroute. They can alter themselves and get back onto their lines again. You know what can't do that? Rail. Rail can't fucking turn around. They can't fucking... They literally cannot do anything. You get stranded if you're on a fucking MAX train and the power goes out. Or there's a crash over here and there's some incident happening at this next station in front of you. Now you're just stuck. Congratulations. And that's using fire department resources, EMS resources at that point, because now they have to go and fucking save your ass, and legally they have to be the ones to help guide people off of the train, along the trackway, and to the road for some stupid reason. Light rail's a logistical nightmare. It makes no fucking sense. BRT is the most logical fucking thing in the world because it can snake around and through anything. It doesn't matter if there's an accident that happens directly in front of them. If need be, they can... And even if that one bus gets stuck, guess what? There's another bus 2 to 6, 7, 8 minutes behind that bus that's going to now just go around. Maybe at the next intersection before, they'll have a temporary stop to pick up those people who got stranded on that bus. They'll just let them off because they're obviously against the sidewalk. Just open the doors, let them off, let them walk down to the next intersection so that bus can pick them up before they go around that whole wreck. It's just common sense shit. Rail can't do that. Rail is stuck on its own tracks. It cannot U-turn. It cannot reroute. It cannot do detours. It is eternally stuck. Once something happens, you're fucked. It's fucked, and you can't do anything about it. Technically, yes, you could continue service from whatever the last stop was, or maybe you're at that stop, and then there's an incident up here blocking everything. Okay, you can go swap rail cars because there's obviously it's drivers on both ends. You can go, the driver can go from that end, operator can go to the opposite car, the end of the opposite car, and then drive it back again. And then you can go between those stops until whatever the fuck is ahead of you clears out, and now you can go continue. Technically, yes, but again, is that really worth spending billions of fucking dollars a mile? Or even a few $100 million a mile to do? Versus being able to do the same thing with BRT. You know what I mean? Again, I don't expect any of these big time die-hard light rail fanatics to give a fuck or to ever use logic, because they never do. But at the very least, for anybody who somehow might be able to find themselves out of that weird mentality cult of light rail only, is you swear they jack off to pictures of light rail trains or Max or something. I swear to God, man. There's such wildly illogical, unintelligent people. But you know what? I'm done. I blabbed on enough. So that's that.